It sounds impossible, but 10 torture methods of Russian gulags was worse than you imagine is the story survivors begged the world to believe. In 1938, hunger made men fight over potato peels while guards watched. Western journalists were barred, and rumors grew in the silence. What really happened behind those barbed wires? The answer waits inside this story. 10. They worked men until their bones snapped in the frozen Siberian hell. The Gulag existed to destroy strength slowly. Every sunrise meant another march through snow so deep it swallowed boots. Prisoners worked in forests and mines with bare hands and rusted tools. The cold dropped below -40 degrees. Frost cracked through skin and breath froze before it left the mouth. In Siberia's Kolyma camps, men dug gold they would never touch. Every prisoner had a daily target: tons of earth to move, trees to cut, stones to haul. Those who failed lost their food share. One missed quota could mean death within days. Hunger came faster than bullets. The guards called it natural selection. Historians estimate more than 3 million people died in these labor camps between 1930 and 1953. The Road of Bones, built across Kolyma, earned its name because the frozen ground held more corpses than gravel. Varlam Shalamov, a survivor, wrote that anyone who lasted 2 winters had the strength of 10 men. He watched friends collapse mid-swing, their hands still gripping shovels. No one stopped working. The guards only shouted, "Faster!" as if speed could fight the cold. Nights offered no safety. Barracks smelled of sweat, smoke, and disease. Blankets stayed wet, lice never left, and silence often meant someone had died quietly. Every dawn brought the same question: who will fall next? The Gulag measured progress in death, not production, but the body could suffer even more. The next weapon was hunger, a slow killer that ate from the inside out. 9. They starved prisoners. So long. They chewed leather and candle wax to live. Food in the Gulag was not nourishment, it was a weapon. Every piece of bread decided who lived another day and who collapsed in the snow. Prisoners received 300 grams of bread for heavy work, less than half a loaf. If someone failed their daily quota, the ration dropped to 100 grams. That was less than 400 calories, less than what a small child needed to survive. Men boiled leather belts and chewed the glue off boots. Some searched garbage pits for frozen potato peels or animal bones. In camps like Vorkuta and Norilsk, hunger turned friends against each other. A man could trade his coat for soup that had no meat, only water and salt. Survivors later said the smell of food was torture. Guards sometimes ate in front of them, throwing crumbs on the ground to watch prisoners fight for them. One former inmate wrote that hunger erased every human feeling: pride, fear, shame. Only survival stayed. Winter made it worse. Frost killed the few vegetables grown in prison gardens. Dead horses became feasts. In Kolyma, workers dug through snow for half-buried carcasses to cook. Some even boiled human flesh from unburied corpses, an act many could not admit for the rest of their lives. Historians believe more than half of Gulag deaths came from starvation or disease caused by hunger. The state recorded it as weakness, but it was planned control through famine. The human body can fight hunger for a while, but cold breaks the mind faster. And that became the next stage of cruelty. 8. They forced people to stand barefoot in snow until flesh turned black. Cold became a method of punishment. Guards did not need ropes or guns, they had Siberia. Prisoners were ordered to stand outside for hours, sometimes half naked, in temperatures that could reach -50 degrees. Skin froze within minutes, toes cracked, and breath turned into ice on their lips. In many camps, this punishment was called the stand. It looked simple, just standing still, but it was a death sentence stretched across hours. Some prisoners fainted and froze solid before anyone touched them. Others were forced to stand barefoot on snow until the soles of their feet split open. Guards laughed, saying the frost would teach obedience. There are reports from Norilsk and Vorkuta of men made to carry buckets of water on their shoulders in the cold, watching it turn to ice before they could move. Many dropped dead where they stood. their bodies stiff before they hit the ground. A survivor named Ivan Panin said the silence was worse than pain. You could hear the frost eating your skin, he remembered. Some guards called it moral correction. It meant freezing fear into the body until the mind broke too. The worst part came later. After hours outside, prisoners were thrown back into heated rooms. The sudden warmth shattered their skin and muscles. Many never walked again. The Gulag used the weather as a weapon, but when pain became routine, brutality had to rise again. The next punishment came from human hands. 7. They beat men with rifle butts until blood mixed with the ice beneath them. Violence ruled every corner of the Gulag. Guards were trained to break bodies, not to manage them. A dropped tool, a slow movement, or even the wrong glance could bring a rifle butt to the ribs. Some guards used rubber clubs, others boots with iron tips. Beatings happened daily, often for no reason at all. Survivors said punishment was meant to teach fear. A guard named Kuznetsov became known for breaking noses with one punch. In the camp at Vorkuta, overseers lined prisoners up after roll call and kicked them down one by one, saying they were too weak for socialism. Many died on the spot, trampled before anyone lifted them. Work accidents were called discipline cases. A man crushed by logs would be blamed for carelessness. His rations were cut posthumously, on paper, as if he could still eat. Some prisoners begged for a bullet instead of another beating. It was faster, less humiliating. Female prisoners faced double punishment. Guards dragged them by hair, stripped them in the snow, and used humiliation as control. In the women's barracks, bruises were a common color. One survivor, Eugenia Ginsburg, wrote that the beatings had a rhythm: morning, noon, night. She said you learned to keep silent because crying made them hit harder. Violence became a language. Every strike reminded them they were property of the state, and pain was the only proof of existence. However, when fists grew tired, another kind of torment began, one that worked through silence and darkness. 6. They locked prisoners in coffin-sized dark cells. Until their minds split, the Gulag's dark cells were called boxes. They were punishment for those who spoke too loud, walked too slow, or dared to question an order. These cells measured less than 2 meters long and 1 wide, barely enough space to lie down. There was no bed, no toilet, no window, only a hole in the floor and a bucket that froze solid in winter. Prisoners were locked inside for days, sometimes weeks. They stood in complete darkness, unsure if it was day or night. Food came once a day, usually a few spoons of watery soup and a crust of bread. The walls dripped with moisture, and rats crawled over sleeping bodies. Those who entered sane rarely came out the same. Some screamed at voices that never existed. Others forgot their names or how to speak. A prisoner named Alexander Dolgin recalled counting his own heartbeat to keep from going mad. When he lost count, he started singing nursery rhymes to himself until his throat bled. In some camps, guards used the wet cell, flooding the floor with freezing water, so prisoners had to stand all night or drown in inches of ice. If they fainted, they froze where they fell. Silence broke people faster than pain. Many begged to be returned to work detail just to hear another human voice. But when sleep became the only escape, the next method made sure even that small mercy disappeared. The torment soon moved from the body to the mind. 5. They kept people awake for days, until the brain started eating itself. Sleep became a weapon in the Gulag. Interrogators knew that a man awake for long enough would believe anything, say anything. Some prisoners were kept from sleeping for 5, 6, even 10 days. Lamps burned all night, guards shouted, buckets of cold water splashed across faces the moment eyelids began to close. At Lubyanka prison in Moscow, one method was simple: make the prisoner stand. If he sat or fell, he was beaten with a belt. One survivor wrote that after 3 days, dreams start walking into the room. People saw shadows moving, heard voices that told them to confess, even if they didn't know what for. Doctors who later studied Gulag survivors said sleep deprivation could cause organ failure and psychosis after just 96 hours. Prisoners described losing control of time. Hours felt like seconds, or seconds stretched into hours. The mind broke before the body did. Guards called it the conveyor. One officer questioned while another rested, so the prisoner never stopped talking. Those who fainted were revived with ammonia or ice water, forced back on their feet, and made to repeat their confessions. A man named Valentin Goncharov recalled begging for sleep more than food. "I would have traded 10 loaves of bread for 1 hour of rest," he said. When exhaustion no longer worked, the tormentors switched tactics again. This time, they demanded words, confessions, names, guilt, no matter how false. The next step was interrogation through pain. 4. They tortured prisoners until they signed crimes. They never even heard of every confession in the Gulag came with blood behind it. Interrogations were less about truth and more about obedience. The goal was to make a prisoner agree to anything. Agents from the NKVD used fists, boots, truncheons, and iron rods. They called it the conversation. Many prisoners were questioned for 10 to 12 hours straight. Some were beaten with wet towels so no bruises showed. Others were made to kneel on glass or iron rods until their legs swelled and skin tore open. One officer bragged that he could make a man confess to killing Lenin himself after 3 nights of questioning. In Moscow's Butyrka prison, historians found records showing prisoners signed confessions to crimes that happened before they were even born. But that didn't matter. Paper meant power. A signed confession made the system look right. Torture was also mental. Guards threatened to arrest families, wives, children, parents, unless the prisoner cooperated. One man, Mikhail Kolyada, broke down after hearing his child's name on the list. He confessed instantly, though he had no idea to what. Survivors said the worst part came after the signature. They were told to repeat their confessions in court with a smile. Refusal meant another trip to the basement for clarification. By the end of Stalin's Great Terror, millions had signed false statements. The state didn't need proof, it needed submission. But those who refused, those who stayed silent, faced something even more cruel: punishment disguised as medicine. 3. They drugged people in mental wards and called it Soviet treatment. When beating and hunger failed, the Gulag system turned to doctors. Psychiatry became another weapon. Anyone who refused to confess could be declared insane and sent to a special hospital. In theory, it was medical help. In reality, it was a laboratory of human suffering. Patients were strapped to beds for weeks. Doctors injected them with powerful drugs like haloperidol and sulfazine, which caused muscle spasms, burning fevers, and hallucinations. Some were placed in ice baths for hours, teeth chattering until they blacked out. Others were tied to chairs while electric shocks ran through their skulls. A therapy to make them obedient. The Soviet government called it re-education through treatment. The patients called it a second prison. A report from the 1970s described one ward where prisoners screamed for days without being allowed to sleep. Nurses walked past as if nothing happened. Officially, the goal was to cure political madness, meaning any thought that disagreed with the state. Writers, priests, and professors ended up in wards meant for violent criminals. One survivor, Vladimir Bukovsky, later wrote that he met men who forgot their own names after years of injections. "They took away your voice," he said, "then your memory, then your mind." Many who entered those wards never returned to normal life. Their bodies left the hospital, but their minds stayed there forever. However, those who survived sometimes faced something even darker: humiliation that didn't end with pain, but with complete loss of dignity. 2. They used rape and fear as weapons, stronger than any chain in the camp. Inside the camps, power had no limits. Guards controlled everything: food, warmth, and even a person's body. For many women, survival meant living through constant fear of sexual assault. In the Gulag system, no law protected them, and silence became the only defense. Reports from survivors describe nights when guards entered women's barracks after dark. They picked whoever they wanted, sometimes trading food for the right to abuse them. Some women formed protective relationships with officers just to stay alive. Alexander Solzhenitsyn wrote that in Kolyma, the coldest camp, one piece of bread could decide a woman's fate. Pregnancy didn't bring mercy. Women who gave birth were sent back to labor the next day. Their babies were often taken away and raised in state orphanages while mothers went back to the mines. Official records show that in the 1940s, over 20,000 infants were born in gulags. Most never saw their parents again. Men faced their own form of violence. Guards forced them to fight each other for food or entertainment. Those who refused were stripped, beaten, or publicly shamed. In some camps, inmates were forced to crawl on the ice while others watched and laughed. It wasn't chaos, it was control. The camp turned humans into objects, breaking spirit before body. And even when death ended the pain, the punishment did not stop. Because in Stalin's system, guilt spread like a shadow, touching the family long after the prisoner was gone. 1. They punished families. 2. So no one could ever escape the Gulag's grip. The Soviets didn't stop with one body. They wanted the pain to echo through generations. When a man was dragged into the Gulag, his wife and children were pulled into a different kind of cell, one built from fear. Families became tools in the state's torture machine. Guards would whisper to prisoners during interrogations, "Your wife is next. Your son is already arrested." They lied sometimes, but the effect was real. Men broke faster from those words than from any whip. Those who didn't confess were shown forged letters, written in a wife's name, saying she had betrayed them. That mental break, watching love rot from inside, was the real design. In Moscow prisons, wives were locked in freezing rooms with dripping walls, forced to hear recordings of their husbands screaming. Some were stripped and left under buckets of cold water until their skin split. Others were made to clean the torture chambers where their families had been beaten. One woman later wrote, "They broke us by making us imagine the sound of our own." Children weren't spared either. They were starved, beaten for refusing to renounce their parents, or given new names so their family would vanish from history. By 1940, over 300,000 families had been destroyed this way. Everyone turned into a weapon against itself. And the most haunting part? Even after the torture ended, nobody knew which scream belonged to them anymore. History hides its darkest truths in the quietest corners. If stories like this make you think deeper, subscribe and stay close. The next chapter of Forgotten History begins right after this.